Alright, I'm John, and this is Wayne, and Wayne's a fuzz pedal, which obviously the world needs more of. He's a convenient size, and I've not gone too overboard with the controls this time, so he's pretty straightforward to use. But in order to make him worthwhile, he's got some, tricks up his sleeve. Let me show you. I'll try and keep this brief, because obviously we've all had our attention spans annihilated by social media. Design goals for Wayne, I wanted just kind of that classic fuzz sound, really, big fat retro fuzz. I've put together an interesting collection, I guess, of transistors over the years, so I kind of like the idea of using something with a bit of, in inverted commas, mojo in there. What I settled on was a circuit, which is it's basically just 3 gain stages in a row, like 3 boosters in a row. So we've got a germanium boost, so the germanium transistor pushing a couple of BC 183s. They're silicon transistors, and they were used in some of the older original silicon fuzz face circuits, I believe. So germanium boost, first thing that springs to my mind is like a range master or something like that, like Tony Iommi used in the early Sabbath records. So it's got that kind of texture, and the fuzz control is literally the volume output of that first gain stage, and you just decide how hard it's hitting the following 2 silicon stages. So I could have just left it at that with the 2 controls, and it would have been a fun project. I felt it needed something a bit more though to make it a lateral thing, and what I've ended up with is what we've labelled Strife here. Strife is essentially, it gives you the opportunity to starve the circuit of power. So at full rotation, it's seeing full 9 volts, and as you gradually turn it down, it's seeing less and less power. What that means is at full rotation, it's at its most aggressive with the fuzz control right up and the Strife right up. It's kind of a big, quite heavy focused sound. As we then start to back the Strife control off, the first thing you notice is Wayne starts to feed back and oscillate, which can actually be quite useful musically speaking. You can kind of set the frequency of the oscillation to the key that you're playing in or whatever, and you can get some kind of octave-y effects and that sort of thing. It's quite useful. And to be honest, it never hurts to have feedback on tap that you can just switch on and off. So as you turn that down, the frequency of the feedback changes. Also, you can get some really interesting square wavy kind of synth sounds if you back the fuzz control right off while it's oscillating. In the last third of the Strife control's rotation, we get what I think of as the most retro sounds that Wayne puts out. Things kind of loosen up a bit, and they get a bit less focused, a bit more kind of mushy, and we get a lot of kind of cool textures happening around there. Might see a bit of volume drop at that point, but that's not a problem. Just push the level control up and back at unity gain. Power wise, it's just the standard 9 volt adapter. I don't like using batteries, I think they're a bit grim. We've got a true bypass switch there, and some Neutrik jacks, which are really good at hanging on to your cables. Wayne really likes single coils, P90s, humbuckers, synthesizers, just whatever you want to plug into him. He's not fussy. Right, let's do exactly that now, and I'll show you how he sounds. Right, let's start off with some humbuckers, and I think I'll probably switch over at some point or other to the telly. Wayne is on the mini board over here, and he's currently set flat out, and I've got a completely clean amp. If we start backing off the Strife control, so you can get this sort of ridiculous sub-synth kind of thing happening. So there's all kind of manner of weird tones and textures and drones and all sorts that you can find in there. Right, so we've got the Strife control kind of beyond the point of oscillation now. So Wayne gets a bit more kind of retro sounding at this point. It's a lot more of that kind of classic, looser, broader sounding fuzz. That's kind of collapsed in on itself. Let's switch over to the telly. Okay, so telly with single coil pickups obviously, which means slightly lower output. I have turned the amp up a bit to kind of compensate for that, but it's still completely clean. lots of kind of weird possibilities amongst that lot. So yeah, getting below that point, obviously we get into the weird texture zone again, with the Strife being that much lower, a lot less sort of voltage being sent through the circuit. Things sound a bit more tragic. Right, hopefully that gives you an idea of the kind of tones and textures that we can get out of Wayne. I'm really pleased with how he came out. I'm pleased with the voicing. Some fuzzes you find are sort of too broad as soon as you start introducing it into a mix with other instruments. It's easy to get lost with the bottom end with a bass and kind of kick drum, and the top end disappears into sort of cymbals and that kind of thing. But yeah, he's definitely got his own voice. I'm really pleased with how the Strife control came out. The kind of weird sub-bass square wave synthy stuff is like a bit of an Easter egg, and yeah, there's a lot of fun to be had in there. If you want to hear any more, I tend to put sort of mini clips on Instagram fairly regularly. So yeah, thank you very much for your time. Cheers.